Hello, everyone. Today we are going to present our work on clustering analysis in the title of Flights of Lombok International Airport pre and post COVID-19. Our group consists of me, my name is Madeline, and the other members are Alya, Della, and Anissa. So, as we know, Lombok is a beautiful island that offers many outdoor activities, and Lombok has been established as a super priority destination in Indonesia. And most people visit Lombok mainly for tourism activity, although it does not rule any other purposes. Since March 2020, the pandemic has begun to enter Indonesia. This phenomenon has resulted in a contraction in the Indonesian economy and created horrible conditions for the tourism sector in Indonesia. Indonesia has made policy restrictions on travel to and from countries in the red zone of transmissions during the COVID-19 pandemic to break the chain of COVID-19 transmission. This restriction policy impacts flight schedules. Most customers also canceled their flight ticket orders due to the increasing spread of COVID-19. Here in this final project, we sought to answer the following research question, which is to what extent does the COVID-19 pandemic affect the aviation industry in Lombok? The primary purpose is to analyze clusters between observations and periods. With the dataset given, we could also observe the airport classifications, of which airports have the most and the least flight numbers included in the clusters. Identify the changes that happen and the difference between those periods, and also examines how different methods of clustering will provide different results or types of clusters. So the first method that we are going to use in the clustering analysis is K-means. K-mean is one method of non-hierarchical clustering data that attempts to partition existing data into one or more clusters or groups. This method is partitioned into clusters or groups so that the data with the same characteristic, which is the high intra-class similarity, are grouped into the same clusters, and those with different traits in inter-class similarity low are grouped into the other groups.
Okay, so as it is mentioned before, that the first method that our group will use is K-means algorithm. So the first thing we need to do is deciding the optimal number of cluster using elbow method. Here we found that the cluster we'll use for both before and after COVID-19 are four clusters. Then after getting the results that suggest 4 as the number of optimal clusters, we visualize it using the fis cluster command and get the result as presented here, where the left side is before pandemic in the year 2017 until 2020, and the right side is after pandemic, which is 2021 and 2022. And there, as we know that there are 4 clusters, and it is described with different colors that indicate different clusters. Next this is the table details, the difference of clusters across the period, where the average number of flights decreases for every clusters. An exception for cluster 4 is because there is only one airport after the pandemic included, and therefore the average cannot be found. But overall, it can be said that there is a significant reduction in the average number of flights for all clusters due to the pandemic. The best cluster also changed in the midst of the period, where before the pandemic hit, the best cluster is 2, while the after the pandemic, the 4th cluster indicates the cluster that has the highest number of flights. One interesting finding using the K-means method is that before the pandemic, the best cluster is 2 with the most frequent flight to Juanda Airport, located in Surabaya. Juanda Airport experienced an increase in passengers, especially in 2017 and 2018. This is due to the fact that East Java is one of the most popular destinations for travelers, and Surabaya is also the 2nd largest city in Indonesia and a center for business. However, the flying pattern experienced a decline right before the pandemic, as seen by the reduction in the number of flights to Juanda Airport in 2019 and 2020. Even still, Juanda Airport is seeing a disproportionately larger volume of flight compared to other airports. However, it changes during the time of 2021 until 2022 because due to the pandemic, Juanda Airport no longer has the highest number of flights, and even now, its flight volume is only around 60% of what it was prior to the COVID-19 epidemic. Where now Cengkareng is titled as the airport with the most frequent flights from or to Lombok. This may be due to the fact that Cengkareng is the biggest and the busiest airport in Indonesia, and it is also located near Jakarta, the capital city of Indonesia. And in addition, there is a MotoGP event in Lombok from 18 to 20 March 2022 with the highest daily route intensity from Jakarta Lombok during that event.
The next one, I'm going to explain the hierarchical. So hierarchical clustering is used to cluster unlabeled datasets. And with this approach, we create a tree-like structure known as dendrogram that represent the hierarchy of cluster. So dendrogram is actually a network structure that it is actually graphed like constructed like a tree, and it actually contains of the branches and also the leaves. And I will give a following example in the next slide. Next. No. Next. Okay. So this is the example of the dendrogram. So as we can see that this is something like a tree actually, because there are the branches, which is the long lines, and also there are the leaves, which is the small lines below, like with the numbers, those are the leaves. And what actually this explains, the dendrogram actually explains the relationship between the data set when they have a close relationship or good similarity, they will be clustered in one cluster. So there are 3 clusters actually here, as we can see. There are the red one, the green one, and also the blue one. And this is the dendrogram that we got from the pre-pandemic and the post-pandemic. We are using 2 methods. The first one is the complete, which is this one, and the next one though. And the next one, we are using the average method, which is also we are using the pre-pandemic data and also the post-pandemic data. Next. And next one, I'm going to explain the clustering of hierarchical. Next though. And actually, this one is our result in the pre-pandemic. As we can see that in the pre-pandemic, there are 3 clusters, which the blue one has the highest flight numbers to Lombok, which includes Cengkareng, Juanda, and also Ngurah Rai. And the green one actually explains that the flights to Lombok is actually in the average or medium numbers, and the least one is the red one because it is the small one and it's more to the left. And as we can see that the highest one is from Cengkareng, as what Della mentioned before, because Cengkareng is one of the busiest cities in Indonesia because it is the capital city of Indonesia. And actually in the post-pandemic, there is no quite difference because Cengkareng is still the highest airport that connects with the Lombok. But actually what make it different is the number of flights. As we can see that in the pre-pandemic, the highest one is 10, which is Cengkareng, and in the post-pandemic, the highest one is only 5, which is we can actually conclude that the total number of flights is decreasing from the pre-pandemic to the post-pandemic. Next.
So the conclusion for our research is, in terms of methods, K-means clustering is a very simple and fast algorithm. Furthermore, it can efficiently deal with large datasets. However, there are some limitations of the K-means approach that is sensitive to outlier, whereas hierarchical clustering is the same as K-means but with a different outcome. The outcome of hierarchical clustering is a denogram. It is a tree-based representation of the observation. So the difference between k-means and hierarchical clustering is, if k-means you have to specify the numbers of cluster, hierarchical clustering doesn't need to search for the specific numbers. And for the limitation of k-means, it is sensitive to outlier, whereas hierarchical clustering, it is not sensitive to outliers. So the solution of the research is to use both methods to analyze your data. First, you will need to use k-means to specify the optimal clusters that is the best for your data. Whereas you can continue with hierarchical clustering for a bit for being a more robust outcome, because hierarchical data doesn't need to it is insensitive to outliers. Another solution regarding the research, where it is Lombok flights in pre and post COVID, is the COVID-19 has impacted the tourism service. As travel restriction is already lifted, the government of Indonesia could promote the tourism through travel incentive. Those incentives could be lifting the restriction and rules, promoting digital tourism and green tourism, and support the development of the tourism in the province center, which is Lombok. Thank you so much for uh, tuning in. Hope you find our research very insightful, and sorry if there are many mistakes as we are still learning. Thank you.